County Council Worksession for May 8, 2012. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Calling the roll for the work session, Mr. Miller.
Present.
Mr. Brady.
Present.
Mr. Germana. Mr. Gallagher.
Here.
Mr. Schron.
Here.
Ms. Conwell. Mr. Jones. Mr. Rogers. Ms. Simon.
Here.
Mr. Greenspan.
Here.
6 members are present. Oh, Ms. Conley.
She's here
Sorry.
too.
I'm here too, okay. We're here this afternoon for one of our MedMart updates, and this is probably our 5th or 6th update since we've come into council, and we're looking forward to hearing a presentation from Jeff Applebaum and also Jim Bennett. So, Mr. Applebaum, you have the microphone.
Good afternoon. I'm going to present a rather brief update, and then we're going to let MMPI and Bennett speak a little bit about what's happening with the business plan, in as much as you haven't yet heard from Jim, so we wanted to make sure we spent time on that. I'll give you a brief summary, and then if there's questions, I can entertain questions. The project is going very well, and in a minute you're going to see an important milestone date that we have hit. Once again, I have up here the project summary, and every update starts with the project summary, and the point that I make with this is the project summary has never changed. The scope, the components are the same as they were, the budget is the same as it was, and we are once again on time and on budget. I'll speak a little bit more about that in a few minutes. With respect to the design phase, we are now at that point that all interior finishes have been selected and contracts awarded. So we now are done basically with selecting what is in the building. One modification which has been made is that there is an alternate corridor layout for the Medical Mart showroom. Levels 2, 3, and 4. It's being implemented to have future flexibility and better flexibility and product visibility. I'll show you what that's about on a subsequent slide. I will also tell you that there have been updated renderings. As you saw, these have been shared. The Plain Dealer wrote a very nice story about the design and what's inside. I will be providing the renderings to council, and there's no reason, I think, why we couldn't simply take those renderings and put them up on the website. They're public information. Some of you have seen a few of these renderings, and we'll simply put them up on the website so everyone can see what the interior looks like. We also have interior finish books, and if you are the type that likes to look through finish books and feel carpet and touch tile and things like that, those finish books are also available, and we can, if you'd like, just let me know and I can share the finish books with you. They are at the project office, but the finish books are also available so you can see what types of materials are actually being utilized in the facility. With respect to construction, we are on schedule for an August 31, 2013, and for the first time I'm putting in parenthesis or earlier substantial completion date. I don't know that we can or should complete earlier in terms of what's involved, but we are at least exploring whether an earlier completion date is possible, what, if any, cost would be involved with the earlier completion date, and what it would mean in terms of anything additional that we could accommodate. Is there another show? Is there another event that would make sense for an earlier completion date? You'll hear more about this later, but I will tell you we're at the early exploration stage because the project is going so well that we may actually be able to complete early. I'm not saying that we're doing it yet, but we are exploring that possibility. Another milestone, you may have noticed, if any of you were at the Rock Hall induction ceremony, you may have noticed that the drive immediately to the west of the Rock Hall was open. Now, we have work underneath that drive. We have an entire corridor that's underneath that drive where we have support space for the facility. But in order to accommodate the Rock Hall event, we completed the drive on top. We put in the new drive, sidewalks, lighting, and you'll see that the fence has now been moved back to the west side of that drive, and that was all turned over to the city and accepted by the city prior to the Rock Hall event. So that drive is now available, and it now supports a public auditorium. So that occurred just before the induction ceremony. Through March 31, the total pay applications on the project, we have now paid, or at least the applications which have been submitted and approved, total $196,083,000. Of that, we have now paid $175 million for construction in place, $18.7 million during the month of March alone. And this is an interesting number because during the last month, we crossed the 50% completion mark. We have now completed 50% of the work on the project based on billings to date, work in place, stored materials, and the actual physical progress that has been made. The first 50% of the work obviously occurred, in the elements. It was completely open. A lot of the work is now occurring enclosed. So we're at that point right now where we can have even more workers working in protected spaces. But we're 50% done. We've gotten to the halfway mark. So that's an exciting milestone date, especially considering the fact that we maintain on or ahead of budget, or on or ahead of schedule, and right on budget for the project. Purchasing for the project is also complete. Obviously, we've gone through and entered into a lot of contracts and purchasing for materials yet to be delivered and stored or installed, but our purchasing for the project is essentially complete, which is also good because we now know at least what everything costs, and we are still within budget. So we've hit all these milestone dates. There's still a few things, I should say, a few packages that remain intentionally. The one is the signage package. We knew we would do that later, but substantially all the major purchasing is in fact complete. We're also on schedule to receive LEED Silver certification. Nothing has changed about that. One thing I should mention that's not in the notes right now, one of the obligations that we have is to meet ADA, American Disabilities Act compliance. We have gone through, and obviously as part of the design phase, we did go through our whole ADA process, confirmed that the project was ADA compliant. There's actually a Cuyahoga County Council process that we went through. I will tell you at this point in time, and this says nothing about any particular issues or concerns about the project, but the U.S. Department of Justice now has taken on an active role in ADA compliance. So they have selected it's like winning the lottery. They've selected our project for an ADA compliance review. So they have brought officers in to review our project to make sure in their independent view we have satisfied ADA requirements. We've sent our drawings and materials down to a design firm in Atlanta, an individual who's reviewing it. We're supposed to hear back in several weeks. So we are having this ADA audit, but once again, it has been described to us as basically a random audit. No reason to believe we have any issues or problems, but we'll wait and see what the result of that ADA audit is. So in terms of the project, I'm going to show you a few photographs and give you some information about what's really happening out there. And I'm going to start with this photograph that's up on the board that was actually taken this morning. That's why it's so cloudy and misty out there. And this is actually what's going on the Medical Mart right now. And you can see the precast, which is the precast wall cover, outside cover, is now about 85% complete. It's mostly complete everywhere except on the east face. And as a matter of fact, you now see that the windows are being installed. So it's hard to see on this photograph, but all the way on the left-hand side, my left as I'm looking at it, or the northwest side of the building, you can see windows are actually being installed. There's windows up in that corner, and you'll see the windows come across and fill those spaces. You can also see today they're putting roof insulation up on the top. So you see a crane up there. There's roof insulation stacked down in the corner where I have the red arrow. That roof insulation is being lifted up on the roof and installed. So that's what's going on in the medical mart, and this is the most recent rendering of the medical mart. You can see what that curtain wall or what that precast is going to look like with the windows installed. This is an interesting view. We are now inside the building looking, and we're on the 4th floor of the building, but we're back in the space, the actual showroom space, looking across the atrium and out. So eventually, you're going to see on the other side of the atrium, there's a 2nd floor bridge, a 3rd floor bridge, and a 4th floor bridge that I just put up there. And those will be some of the most dramatic views in Cleveland, both in and out of the facility. As you're sitting in the showroom looking down right now in the construction, down on the bottom, you see the exhibit hall where that truck is, and that exhibit hall will be open. You can be up in the building looking down at the exhibit hall even after it's constructed. If I look out, and this will all eventually be windows here, you can see right there is where the West Mall Drive is that I've just noted, so that drive will come across. If you follow that drive from north to south, you can see right now on the right-hand side the decking is going down, and you see those rectangular holes. Those are actually the tree pits. So eventually that will be West Mall Drive. Eventually there'll be trees lining up on either side of West Mall Drive, and those holes right there are the actual pits that the trees will be in. If I continue to look out the window, now I'm looking out as we're starting to cover the mall, or the exhibit halls, and there's been 3 concrete pours where you see number 1 up until you can see a difference in shade. That was the first concrete pour that occurred several weeks ago. Number 2, that second area, is the second concrete pour. And where number 3 is, and I'll show you a closer look at this in a minute. Right now, you'll see reinforcing steel there, and tomorrow, I believe, is when they're going to actually pour concrete there. So they have been putting decking down, reinforcing steel, pouring concrete as they go from the south to the north, and they're covering over basically the exhibit hall area. Now, what's this going to look like when we're done? The same view, now it's a little bit angled, but those bridges you were just looking at, this is a view. Now we're looking from a corner of the medical mart, one of the showrooms, but there's going to be this dramatic view. You can actually walk on those bridges to go from one end of the medical mart building to the other. When you look out, it will be a dramatic view to the malls and out toward the lake and downtown. One of the most dramatic views you'll see in Cleveland. And when people look in at night, this, of course, will be lit. If there's activity going on, people can look from many different places and see the center of activity in the medical mart. Even if it's not being operated, it will be, there'll be mood lighting or lighting in the building, so people will see this as a beacon. This is actually one of the most dramatic spaces in the building, and it's something I don't think people have appreciated yet as to how interesting this is going to be and how much this will just be a beacon in downtown Cleveland. So this is pretty exciting to see what this is going to look like, and this is a rendering which accurately portrays what that view will be. Now we're going to look out and look down into the exhibit hall space. I showed you, and on the right-hand side, that was concrete pour number 1, 2, and 3. On the right-hand side is concrete pour 2, and what you can actually see here, and I'm going to go from the left side back to the right side. This shows you how this thing's being constructed. We've talked before about the tree columns. You can see on the left-hand side there, my left, as I'm looking at this, your left up here, you can see one of the tree columns. Ultimately, a box truss is put on top of the tree column. You see an arrow there with a box truss. Ultimately, this is all connected with connection trusses. So you have this whole steel framework. Then you put down the metal deck, and you can see on the left-hand side where the metal deck is, you put down the rebar, you pour the concrete. So that kind of shows you how you build up from the steel up into the concrete. In a second, I'll show you what goes on top of the concrete. This is just another view of it, once again showing concrete pour 1, 2, and 3. And you can see, pour 3 hasn't occurred yet, but you can see the rebar there ready for the concrete pour. And looking to the left, once again, you see the steel truss getting ready. And as you can see, we've really caught up with the steel. So that, the issue is making sure that steel is there so that the rest of this construction flows. What then happens? Well, now we're taking a look across to the north side. We're looking north of Lakeside to the area where we have the ballroom. So once we have the concrete poured, the next step is putting down high-density foam. And if you've looked out at all, you see this white foam, which has been out, it's like styrofoam, which has been out on top of the mall. Well, the reason for that is we obviously don't want to have too much of a load on top of this facility. We have people and events on top, and we put this high-density foam because it weighs a lot less than dirt. So the high-density foam is there. This high-density foam is custom-made. Every piece is a little different from every other piece. This stuff will vary from 1 feet to almost, several feet in depth. I think it gets up to about 6 feet, as I recall, in some areas. It can be very thick, but this is the material that actually displaces dirt, soil, and then on top of that, we pour soil, and that soil will be anywhere from a foot to 3 feet of soil on top of that, and that creates the surface. So there you see sort of the rest of the story with the high-density foam and the soil to complete the surface. Notice on the bottom right-hand side, and where you need trees, that's why you put the tree pits in. You see some more of those tree pits on the bottom left-hand side there. And here you see the lift, the beginning of the lift south of Lakeside on the right-hand side. To show this a different way, here's this same view. So West Mall Drive, we looked at East Mall Drive before. West Mall Drive goes north and south where I've labeled it. You see the tree pits on both the left and the right side being installed. And then the lift. You can see the start of the lift, which will become the lakeside entrance, where it lifts up over the existing facility. Eventually, when those tree columns and everything catches up, going from west to east, you'll see this whole lifted structure. So eventually that lifted structure will go from the left-hand side of that red line all the way to the right-hand side. So that'll all be lifted up. So that creates the entrance, the lakeside entrance, and to see what that ultimately looks like, now we're looking at it from the other angle. Now you see the most recent rendering we have of what that entrance looks like. So that's what's being constructed right now, and you see it on the screen right now. On this picture, we're now underneath the ballroom, and this was taken, as it says, on May 7th, so it's a very recent photograph. And you see there's two things to look at here. Number one, they are starting to pour the slab, the concrete slab, underneath the ballroom, or underneath the ceiling of the ballroom, so you can see that the floor is now going in. They're putting the rebar down and starting the slab pour. You can also look to the left, and you can see that the ballroom glass. So this is the glass on the very north side. That is where the ballroom is, and then where the pre-function area is, and then where the meeting rooms are. You can see that glass being installed. And here's actually a construction photo from the outside. You can see that glass is installed there, and you can actually see what that glass looks like in this photograph. I don't have a very good rendering of what it's going to look like when you're in the ballroom looking at, but this is, and by the way, forget about the furniture. This is computer graphic, computer furniture. It's not the furniture you'll have, but this gives you maybe a sense of a corner of the room, and the room is much bigger than it appears here, with an interesting ceiling that we have there that you can see some more renderings of. That's actually a metal slat ceiling, very interesting, and you can see, the view out toward Brown Stadium. I don't like this view, but it gives you at least an idea of what's happening down there. So that's a little construction update that shows you where we're at in the process, 50% done, and gives you an idea of what some of these spaces will be like when they're completed. I'm now going to quickly take you through a risk management list. And these are a lot of issues that you've seen on every risk management list because they have not yet been resolved. The good news is we don't have a lot of other issues. Ultimately, we still, the St. Clair crack, as you know, that was fixed on an interim basis by Turner. We still have the situation of making sure that the final repairs to St. Clair are acceptable. There may be some issues there that have to be discussed between Turner and the city. We believe that the county will have nothing to do with that. This is either a Turner responsibility or a city responsibility, and this is for them to decide. It is an insured claim, so we're really going to stand clear of that, but observe how that is resolved. We do have the issue on the West 3rd Street roadway to the loading dock. As you know, MMPI initially thought they would spend about $1.6 million on those issues. They spent about $1.2 million. We have respectfully told them that we don't think this is a county responsibility. MMPI has respectfully indicated that they don't necessarily, one time, they don't necessarily agree with me, but they have formally claimed, now it's for $1.2 million. We have agreed that we're going to review this in an orderly way, exchanging positions. So that's something that we will ultimately resolve. Right now, it's not impacting the way that we are working together, but it is a claim that is out there. There are some issues that have not yet emerged to this level where we will be discussing some contingency issues. This is the only one that's really a formal claim in the sense of a lot of money being requested right now. There are lists that MMPI has asked us to consider about other possible payments out of our contingency, which we'll deal with in the ordinary course, but this is the only one that's really, I guess, that's at this level. There are some issues right now that Turner is facing with their steel contractor. And this is a claim basically at this point in time that the steel contractor may have with respect to Turner on the cost of steel connections and some of the issues they've had with steel. We believe right now, and MMPI believes, that is a Turner issue being resolved at the Turner level. It could turn into something else, but right now we're watching it, but it's not a claim which is being asserted at the county level. We have, for quite a while now, been in dialogue with the city over some disputed utility charges. These go back to what happened when we split public auditorium and the payment for several $100,000 in the city's view for utility charges. We have respectfully disagreed with the city's position. There's been correspondence back and forth. This is not yet resolved. When it gets to a point of resolution, I'll discuss it with you. We absolutely know that there is something that we owe with respect to both electrical and Cleveland thermal charges. We just believe that the amount being requested is in excess of the amount that's owed. So it's an issue that's out there, which we will ultimately resolve, but we are discussing that with the city. So those are some of the risk management issues that we have right now. In terms of the status of the project, in terms of contracting and staffing, this is the old timeline that we presented before, and this is simply a very, very generic timeline for where the project is. But as you can see looking out there, we are really in the process right now that we're really working on getting the building enclosed. And in those areas which are enclosed, we're continuing on with concrete, we're continuing on with mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and everything underneath the enclosed parts of the building. More to the point, this is our manpower loading chart. And as we told you before, up until recently, the manpower loading on the project, there's actually been less manpower on the project than originally anticipated in the manpower loading chart, but once again, there was a reason for that. The original project anticipated contingency usage in the front end of the project to deal with a series of issues, so the contingency was spread out in the front end of the project for possible anticipated man hours. Those man hours never occurred in the front end of the project. However, some of those man hours will now be spread in the rest of the project. So you can see here, for March, the manpower loading, there was an average of 395 people on the project per workday in the month of March. You can see, which is less than anticipated. You can see, however, starting in April, and I don't really know yet, I don't have the results back for April, and we're starting May, but as you can see, it was anticipated that manpower would greatly ramp up. That's the hash marks in April, May, and in fact be more manpower in June than originally anticipated, because now some of these contingency issues are being worked on. So manpower is ramping up, but once again, from an overall point of view, we're on schedule. We don't have overruns to worry about, excess manpower or claims as a result of that. That's all very good. As far as safety is concerned, we have not had any serious accidents on the project, knock on wood or wherever you can knock. There's been a couple, actually 4 incidents where there was some lost time, but no serious accidents. So Turner continues to maintain a very safe project. Economic inclusion. Here you see our contract goals, SBE, 25% goal. We continue to be over the 30% number. We've had 138 SBE subcontractors, and there's been some movement in who those subcontractors are. But you'll see now that 47 of them have been hired by their respective prime contractors for the first time. That projected number had actually dipped a little bit last time I reported, down to around 39 or 40. It's back up to 47, and as we've talked about in the past, the more first-time SBE subcontractors work on the project, that's one indication of success in terms of inclusion. So SBE, we're at 30.4. County residency has actually gone up a point since the last time I reported. We have a goal of 40% workforce from the county. We're at 49%. Last time I reported it was 48. And city residency, the goal is 20%. We continue at around 21%, which is consistent with where we have been in the past. This chart's a little hard to read, but the point about this, if you look at the bottom line, this is total workforce statistics for construction work. We have now expended 514,000 man-hours on the project. The 21% from the city, you see there at 105,000 or about 106,000 hours, and you see Cuyahoga County, 253,000 or 49% county workforce. While not required to keep these numbers as an accommodation, we have been monitoring both minority and female workforce, and you can see that our minority workforce on the project is also around 21%, 107,000 man-hours. Our female workforce about 5% at 25,000 man-hours. There is a concern early in the project. We started reporting numbers in the 19-20% range. There was a concern that these numbers would drop. They have not dropped. They've stayed consistent and in fact have grown a little bit as a percentage. So these numbers continue. The SBE city and Cuyahoga County numbers have been in excess of our goals, and for reporting purposes, minority and female numbers have kept a pace as we've monitored those numbers. So at this point, that's the brief construction update. If there are any questions about the construction update, I'll take them. Otherwise, I'm going to introduce Myron and Jim. I can also take questions at the end if they occur to you.
I think we might be better off taking them at the end because we do want to hear from Mr. Bennett. And thank
Okay.
you for your brief presentation.
Okay, I'm getting briefer all the time. So at this point in time, you've seen Myron Maurer several times here. I'm going to have, because we had to make sure Myron had an important role, we decided that Myron would introduce Jim. So,
An important and brief role. Myron Maurer, I'm Chief Operating Officer for MMPI. About 60 days ago, through some communications and discussions with business and civic leaders here in Cleveland, we became aware that Jim Bennett was interested in joining our staff and becoming part of the Medical Mart. And we entered into some conversations with Jim, found him to be, very experienced, obviously, having great knowledge with the medical community, local community, and we moved quickly to engage and hire Jim to add to our staff. So beginning in mid-April, Jim has joined us, and we're excited to have him, and that's the end of my presentation. It's all yours, Jim.
well done.
Welcome, Mr. Bennett.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me meet with you and have a chance to talk about my thoughts about where we stand and what to look forward to in the future. I'd like to thank Myron and my colleagues in Chicago for giving me this opportunity. It's exciting to be part of something that's so important to our county and to our region, and it really is an honor and a privilege. And as I've said to several of you that I have met, I see you as my clients. I see the people of Cuyahoga County as my clients, and you are their representative. So I thank you very much for the opportunity to meet. One of the great things about coming to this role is the terrific staff that has been built by MMPI, and I thought I might take a moment, because you may not know some of them, to introduce them to you. A couple of them are missing, but let me introduce the colleagues who are here, and if they would just wave, I'll kind of go from the left across. Dave Johnson, some of you know, our Director of Public Affairs and PR. In the back here, Brian Milner, a long-standing person with Aramark who's managed 17 facilities at once. And as we're gearing up to operate and put our operating team in place for the meetings and conferences we will soon have, Brian is taking the lead on that. Craig Thompson, who is our Director of Sales for non-healthcare meetings, formerly with the IX Center. Tiffany Matthews, formerly with the Cleveland Clinic. And Tiffany is our Director of Marketing. Saraya Spears, our Sales and Marketing Coordinator. And is Tony? Yes. Well, Tony Prusak, a fourth-generation Clevelander, is the head of our healthcare. He's a Senior Director of Sales and the head of our healthcare sales activities. And then there are three of us who have become the leasing team. I am one of them, so I'm spending a lot of time with potential clients and people who will come to town. Brian Casey, the general manager, as we speak, is with a delegation from Beijing, Medical Equipment Society, who looks over a number of different companies. And we now have on assignment from BioEnterprise, David Rico, who is working with us as well. So we have a leasing team of 3. The last time you might have heard an update from us, that leasing team was 1. So we have tripled the number of people who are calling on clients and having discussions with potential visitors. President Connolly, how much time would we have for me?
Well, our regular meeting is scheduled for 5 o'clock, but if we go over a little bit, we won't hold you in contempt of court or anything, so.
Thank you.
Or contempt of council.
I thought, and I'd be interested in whether this sounds right to you, I thought I might cover 3 things. One, since we haven't met, just a couple of minutes on myself personally, with not in a resume sense, but a little bit more about where I come from and who I am, as you are my clients, and I'm hoping we work in trust and confidence, and just a couple of minutes on that, and then stop and see if there were any questions. After that, to speak a bit about my role and priorities, as I've agreed to them with my colleagues from Chicago, and as I have been explaining them in answers to questions as I've been out in the community. Take any questions on that, and then speak a bit about the substance of what I'm finding and what strikes me now.
I think probably just give your presentation, and then we'll have questions at the end.
For that? I'm taught never to talk that long without getting a reaction. But I will take your suggestion, and you'll allow me to catch your breath.
Yes, we will.
Well, on the personal side,
would you like some water?
Oh, there's some here.
Oh, is that okay?
I hope you won't find this self-indulgent. On the personal side, I grew up in Youngstown, Ohio area, specifically from the town of Poland in the 40s and 50s. I am 69, so I go back a while ago in that community. And the Bennetts in that town are from many generations. I am James E. the Third, and my grandfather, a judge, was known as Judge Bennett. And he and my dad were very committed to the community and seen as community leaders. And from the time I can remember, having been able to know what they did, the theme was giving back and having an impact on the community and making a difference. To give you a sense of the environment in which the judge did the judging, I remember clearly that a scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. For any of you who were scouts, you may remember that too, but that was the way my family was, and if you wanted to shorten it, the golden rule was a pretty good addition to it as to how we were expected to behave and lead our lives. So when with that kind of being in the drinking water, when I graduated from law school and knew that I would not be a very good lawyer, this was in 1968, I looked for a firm that embodied those values. Several of you have asked me about McKinsey & Company. That's the firm I joined, and the principles of the firm were founded on many of those same values, and in particular, if you did a wonderful job for your clients and cared about them far more than the firm or yourself, turned out that the firm would do just fine. And I thought I would go there and spend maybe a year and a half. I passed the bar. And I stayed for 30 years. And with McKinsey as a platform, and then later on KeyCorp, where I was up there on the 57th floor of the Key Tower for 3 or 4 years, I had the opportunity to use those platforms to be of service to the community. First, that service was in Canada, where I was in Toronto and Montreal for 13 years, and I came back to head the offices in the Midwest here in 1982, and I had the opportunity to work with Mayor Voinovich on then turning around the RTA. Spent a lot of time and energy doing that. Worked with the then commissioners on creating and implementing the welfare reform capability of the county. I've had several stints in Cleveland Public Schools, serving Superintendent Boyd at the time when Ohio was running the school district for 6 or 7 months. Having the chance to be the head of CIE, the Cleveland Education Initiative, the business community's vehicle, when I was at Key, so had the opportunity to chair that. And then many economic development activities, one of which I am excited about, particularly this past weekend. I was the founding chairman of the Film Commission. And so the success of the Avengers, there was no film production coming to town when I was asked to take over the leadership of that. So I did that, and I think the economic impact since then has been about $90 million or so. And the Avengers was one of the little things that happened when you do things some years ago. It has the, it comes to make a difference later on. And I had the chance to be on the Cleveland Foundation board for 10 years and chaired grant making. I was the first, when we organized the Cleveland Foundation, to chair all the money coming together rather than in subcommittees. So I say that again, hopefully to just underscore that I am really excited about this opportunity. I moved to New York being a little tired of civic activities 7 years ago, missed Cleveland, decided to come home and began to talk to a number of community leaders about what might I do as a final career event that could really make a difference to the community, that I could really be proud of and give back, because I missed it. And in those discussions, a couple of opportunities came up. The one that worked out to be the best match was the Medical Mart. And so when I had a chance to talk to MMPI in Chicago and meet Myron and Mark Falanga and other colleagues there, I was excited to do it, and that's what brings me here now. So thank you for the history. I hope it would give you some sense of what you could, how I think about this, how passionately I am committed to it, and its success, and kind of the values and orientation that I bring to serving you and to serve our community. And MPI will do very well. It'll be fine if we do a great job for the community, and that we fulfill the potential of this project, I believe very strongly. MMPI will be fine, but my principal focus is not on MMPI being fine, but on this community being fine.
So you want to kind of explain to us what your focus will be then?
Sure. That's the second topic. You would, again, prefer no questions?
Yeah, because I know my colleagues, I love them all dearly, but if we start questions, we may be here till midnight. So we'll give them some question time in a minute.
I will violate my principles, which is never talk this much without listening to my clients. And I will keep a close eye on, I'll keep a close eye on
We can go over, I mean, we don't have a lot on the agenda, so we can go over, so.
Well, I am very happy to answer questions that come to mind. That was my second topic, so thank you. Four things that I agreed in coming to the job would be the first priorities. In addition to being, if I might, a good CEO, I've run lots of businesses. I've spared you the details of the career nuts and bolts of what I've done business-wise. So I am the CEO of the Convention Center and the Medical Mart, so that is the overall responsibility, and there's lots and lots of moving parts. Four particular priorities. They have principally to do, three of them have to do with engagement. The first is to very actively engage the healthcare community in a way that ramped that up a fair amount from the prior few years. Secondly, to deeply engage the business community, whose support and active involvement is going to be very important to the success of the enterprise, most particularly the Convention Center, but also the Medical Mart. Thirdly, to engage actively the industry. I am a healthcare person. I know many people in the industry. You've seen, I think, that we have quite an impressive advisory board that's been put together with respected names. These are people that many of whom I've known before, others of whom they tend to be quite senior people. They're the folks who I had professional contact with. And then something that has interested the community, number four, is to focus on being sharper and clearer as to what is the business plan or what goes on in the Medical Mart in particular, a subject of great interest to everyone. I've spent most of my life working with companies on overall business strategies. It's thought that I might be able to make a contribution there. So to push to be able to answer very soon what is it that we are proposing to do in the Medical Mart, and that was going to be, a few comments were going to be my sense after 18 days of the substance. So those were the four things that were my highest priorities. I've set about them pretty energetically. I've probably had 40 or 50 meetings in these last 18 days, and if you saw my calendar, it looks that way going forward, and these would be engaging the leadership of these various parts of our community and touching the bases that should be touched. I've met with the mayor and for an hour and a half or so, and so on. I've had the opportunity to meet with Mr. Fitzgerald a couple of times. We've had an introductory set of discussions, so I am looking to touch all bases, including individual companies or potential exhibitors in the Medical Mart or people who may bring meetings. And so I've tried to be out with customers too. Keep going?
Yeah, keep going.
Shall I keep going? Okay.
We're going to make you earn your money. But
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I'm not boring you? You
No.
sure? I like client coaching, and I'm very adaptable, so I'm understanding how you'd like me to proceed. A few messages, if I could, coming perhaps without either the benefit or the burden of having been here the last 7 years, but following things from afar. The first thing that strikes me is how the attention focuses on the Medical Mart. That's very interesting because the main action, 3/4 of the assets, and the economic impact on the community is hugely in the Convention Center. The Convention Center is the focal point for how we rebuild our hospitality industry, and having been out of the game for 20 years, how we get back in the meeting business. It has extraordinary impact, and if I were you holding me accountable, I would grill me on how are we doing in the Convention Center, and how are the meetings going, and what are we doing working with Positively Cleveland to make that happen, and so forth. So it's very striking to me, coming in to run 2 new businesses, that the one that's the smaller one gets all the attention and causes all the consternation. It really shouldn't, and I'll talk about that in a moment. I'd like to tell you that for the next, in the last couple of months, the team that I introduced, and Tony, who's not here, together with Positively Cleveland, for the first 18 months to 2 years of the convention center from when we opened, have so far booked 12 meetings. There's little formulas to calculate economic impact. We're at about $42 or $43 million impact already on the books, and we kind of just opened for business. So the convention center, I think, has the opportunity to really, really be a winner for the town. And again, I hope you'll hold me and us accountable for how we do to capture that economic impact. One meeting that we landed, if we had a gong, we would ring it. We did lots of high fives in the office, was a healthcare meeting whose board, it's the biggest ever to come to Cleveland. Its board is going to approve it in June. And so sometimes we don't use names the way you would like to hear them. Mention, how come you won't tell us names? Well, because it's confidential till the board approves, but the contracts are signed. It's 2,000 people. It's roughly 5,600 room nights. It's more or less on the order of $6 million. It's coming June 18th through 21st, 2014. And the team that landed that included the mayor, Mr. Fitzgerald, the healthcare leadership, Dr. Cosgrove, the professionals at both university hospitals and at Cleveland Clinic in the particular discipline who met and worked with these people when they came to town. And it's a long courtship on many of these, over 18 months or so. And most lately, the Iron Chefs turned out and fed and dined these folks in an extraordinary way. So it was just a great example of the power of this community to be able to say, as the mayor put it to me, I made clear to them, if they came, they would be the center. 2,000 people here, they will be the center of our attention. So we were real excited about that. We all should be. And there's some others that soon you'll be hearing about when the contracts are signed. We now have booked some meetings 7 years out. So we've got one group that's coming in 2015, 2017, and 2019, more or less the same size. So when we have the chance to talk in the future, I hope we'll spend some time on the convention center and how it's going. So that's my first impression. My second, and I think perhaps it's useful if may I hand out one piece of paper?
Yes. You have one of our staff people hand it
And
out. Oh, Jean has it.
speaking of generations, do you notice a resemblance between that gentleman and myself? He's the next generation of community service person. He's the head of the young professionals activity and movement in town, and founded an organization called Engage Cleveland, which is part of Global Cleveland, also part of the tradition of community service. This piece of paper captures the sense, if I may just make a few comments, captures the sense of what I am finding. What people who have advised clients do is go talk to a lot of people. They have confidential conversations. They then come back and make sense of the information, try to synthesize it and add some value. So it's more than just reporting, but here is the sense of just one page that tries to capture it. What we all collectively want is a place that's innovative and leading edge wherever possible. So we do not want a place as a community that is mundane, that is full of things that are there simply to be there, but rather we want something that feels and sounds and is like Cleveland, the medical capital, the medical capital of the United States, if not the world. And I go back in that regard to what the Medical Mart has been saying for a long time, where medical innovation, education, and commerce meet. And so some of those themes that for some time I would underscore. Significant ongoing activity across the calendar, not just when major meetings are in town. So if you think of a classic mart that opens and has a convention, everybody shuts down, can't have it. This asset has to be lively, things going on. That atrium that Jeff talked about, better, when you look in it, there better be people there, and it needs to be a community asset. So the programming that's in it cannot be around episodic shows and then it goes dark. If it's going to really work, it has to be refreshed periodically to ensure vitality and visitors' interest. So if it is a place where the latest in healthcare or health developments are shown, we have to have a relationship with the tenants. And the people who are there is they got to keep it current, they've got to keep it interesting, and they have to keep it contemporary. And this is a community asset, and we've had lots of discussions about ways in which we can use these facilities to promote Northeast Ohio meetings and events. And there's a long list of things that could go on in the combination of the medical mart and the convention center that makes it a community asset, both for nonprofits, but for people who will like to be there and generate revenue for the facility. So how is this starting to come together? If you look on the right-hand side, it's my instinct, our team's instinct at the moment, and that of people that I've talked to, the latest being this morning, with the senior management of one of the companies in that second dot point. I have my first sign-up. We have our first sign-up for a state-of-the-art view of the future area. I won't tell you which one it is, but this is the first of those. It will not just be them. They will be the producer of that area, but they will have others who provide to that particular part of healthcare goods and services. It is pretty much the sense of the industry advisory board. And we'll see who steps forward to be a leader, but that collaborative activity, rather than 3 or 4 people in showrooms banging their heads against each other with stuff, is the way to do this. So we have our first sign up, and I'm hopeful that 25 or 30% of the medical mart will have that. So we got our first one seemingly this morning. They're not easy to put together, as you might imagine. The other thing that's pretty clear that I will mention in that area is a static site. It will not work. So happily, some of the advisory board members I had hired for McKinsey here in town, the CEO of GE Healthcare is one of those whom I hired. So I've had several discussions with him, and he was the first to say, if you can make this dynamic, not static, then maybe we could do something. What does that mean? That means we either have technological innovations. We've had lots of discussions with Cisco so far, where they can get back to remotely one of their customer service centers where they show things happening, or link in to one of our local institutions into the OR and see their stuff being used with patients. Or go to other sites where it can be demonstrated so it's real. So it is not going to happen that we're going to have I don't think, where we're going to have many high technology companies in the medical mart that kind of sit there without being linked. Or maybe they get in a bus and they go out there to spend some time at one of our terrific institutions that are hugely attractive to visitors from out of town. So I'm real excited about that, as some of you are, I think, perhaps interested. I'd be very surprised if we don't have 25% or so of this facility devoted to health information technology. I'm not sure who the integrator will be, but I called the CEO of HIMSS yesterday and said, you know, I don't know what, and I didn't reach him, but left him a voicemail and said, we're going to be open soon. They have 25,000 square feet down in Nashville, where they are going to showcase interoperability. So I called them and said, how about let's talk about whether HIMSS might be interested here, and if not HIMSS, we have IBM on our advisory committee. We have 4 or 5 leaseholders who are in the IT area. So I'll make a prediction that 25 or 30% of this is going to be the latest in healthcare information technology. I am hoping and thinking it's going that way, not promising, because blending these things are important, but that's my hunch. Learning spaces, we do need to have dynamic and interesting learning spaces that, for all kinds of reasons, including not just to be episodically tied to meetings. I've had terrific conversations with Tri-C and did not understand the degree to which they have some of the leading capability in the country in biosimulation. They have mannequins that people come here to see, and they're excited about finding a way to work with us and in collaboration with Cleveland State, and I'm seeing the president next week. So I will sort of guess there's going to be some kind of education corridor there. I'd be surprised if there weren't. We're seeing China today. We saw Israel last week, or no, earlier this week. And BioEnterprise intends to showcase local companies, so some part of that facility is going to have early stage companies, even if it's a smaller fraction of it. I think we'll still, going way up to the top, have some single vendor showrooms that there are some who are doing interesting things that we have signed leases with who probably will want to go forward. So this is kind of assembling a puzzle where people get excited, but where there are themes, where you care who your neighbors are, if you're in there, and how you link with them, where you have an interesting corridor or interesting spaces. At least that's what we're trying to do. And this isn't us back in the building making it up. This is what the community, broadly speaking, including some fairly major companies from outside, are saying. And tying this all together with technology that uses telemedicine. And I get excited about this, and I'll make one more comment in that regard. I know a bit about medical society meetings, maybe more than a bit. These societies are in real trouble because it is many of the exhibitors, particularly pharma companies, can't spend $1 million anymore on coming to their meetings, or the device companies. It's just not worth it. Their members, they're under lots of scrutiny for industry support. Their members don't want to get on airplanes and go places for a couple of days as much as they might have wanted to before, yet they need their continuing education credits for the economics of all this to work. Well, what about having a meeting here where we get a couple thousand people, but there's 4,000 people around the country who are able to link in, get their CME credits? So we're starting to have some discussions with the technology providers as to what can we do to change the economics of these meetings. And at a discussion in one of the healthcare institutions last week, that theme of how can we really change the game here in this facility to make that possible. So it's pretty terrific stuff. And I look forward to working with my colleagues and the community to make it happen. And it probably won't look exactly like this. The initial building block was to get some number of leases. We have, if you happen to see it in the press, we have 20 that are pretty solid, in that they're 100% solid or they're 98, and we've agreed on terms and so on. But they tend to be individuals, who want to collaborate with others. So there's a fair amount. We're going back and visiting them, as I did this morning, and seeing each of them and beginning to steer and harness that into something that's pretty exciting. So President Connolly, I don't know quite the protocol of how I address people, other than to try to get their names right. And Councilman Brady, I think I got it wrong earlier. I am new to all of you, so I appreciate you'll help me a little bit if I don't do it quite right. I noticed our Plain Dealer reporter said out a little Twitter or something saying Mr. Bennett is looking at the pictures of the council members as he is getting ready for the meeting, and here they are. And yes, Laura, I am. And if you and I are going to have a good relationship, I guess you can go ahead and do that. And what did you send it on? Twitter, or where were you sending this out? Twitter. So forgive me if I don't get each of your names right, and forgive me since, as some of you know, I'm sort of a first name person. I was told when I joined McKinsey that I would be fired when I was 25 if I ever called a client other than George Zell, who was my first, greatest conductor in the world, my first client. I called him Sir and Maestro, but I'm sort of a first name person, and I'm sure you just as soon I didn't do that here in council chambers. But you'll forgive me, I hope. Yeah, you can coach me on how best to address the council persons or respond to questions.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Bennett, for this very informative presentation. We are scheduled for 5 o'clock, and we're a few minutes over. If anyone has just a dying, pressing question, we'll address it, but we really need to get on to our own agenda.
Madam President.
Yes, Mr. Miller.
Madam President, to Mr. Bennett, I just want to tell you that there's a famous scene in the movie Invictus where Nelson Mandela is looking at pictures of the soccer players before he meets with them. So you're in very good company.
Madam Chairperson.
And Mr. Ray?
I just wanted to say that, you know, from when I've been looking for someone like you to come along in this project for a while, and I'm glad you arrived. And I think I speak for, the council that, we're here to help in any way we can, and we look forward to working with you.
And I'm substituting a picture of Halle Berry for myself.
Our plain dealer reporter will say Judge Connolly substituted Halle Berry.
I used to
Mr.
say
Bennett
Lena
said-
Horne, but people don't know who Lena Horne is.
I
Mr. Schwan.
Thank you, Councilman Brady. I appreciate it. Or through the chair, may I thank Councilman Brady?
All right, Mr. Schwan.
Jim, this is Jack. With a deference to...
Thank you, Jack.
Yeah, and our relationship goes back in some other venues. Question, though, you indicated 4 priorities, and I was having trouble following priority 1, which was actively engage in the medical community,
Yep.
and priority 3 was actively engage in the medical industry. Could you differentiate what those two are? In my mind,
Sure.
was
The
having a hard time,
medical
community and industry.
Yeah, the medical industry would be companies, for example, those on the industry advisory board, and particularly with the focus of those who are not here in Cleveland. So Medtronic signed up the other day, for example. That was the 11th. IBM told us who their representative was earlier this week. So I have one-on-one discussions with the executives in each of those. And then we have our first big meeting next Friday. And so that group of people, Jack, are a different group than the leaders of the Cleveland Clinic, University Hospitals, St. Vincent's Charity, Metro Health, maybe the VA, who's doing some pretty terrific work, and so on. So those healthcare leaders are the ones I was meaning by the first one.
So the industry, the companies would not be, in the normal terms, be considered part of the community, is what you're saying. I just want to make sure, so I understand, when we're out there doing, because I believe that part of our role is to be part of the choir also, to be singing the song.
Yeah,
And so I want to make sure I'm singing the same song, your first priorities.
There's a little bit of overlap in that, of course, we have some quite substantial companies who are also on the industry advisory board, so they would be community as well. And we would want them to make different kinds of contributions and commitments, for example, Steris or Invacare. So there are companies that are local companies that you make a very good point. I should think of as both industry and community. I was thinking particularly of connecting our operation up with the big guys in the country, because those of you who have seen the letters of intent, the 65 of them, and know who's on that list, said, gee, it's kind of interesting, but they look like they're from around here, and where are the big guys? So particularly to get us on the map with the industry heavyweights was what I meant by that one.
All right, anybody down here, anyone else? All right, thank you. Mr. Applebaum, we have available June 12th or June 26th to hear from you again. Do you want to lock in one of those dates? Do you want to take the outside day, the 26th, or? Okay. Okay, well, we're going to put you tentatively down for June 26th, and if there's a problem with that date, or you want to move it up, you can let us know. All right, if there's nothing further, yes?
Madam Chair, yes, just for the record, I would like to mention that shortly after the meeting began, that council members Germana, Conwell, Jones, and Rogers all joined the meeting.
Okay, thank you. And if there's no further business before this work session, is there any other public comment from the work session? And if there's no further business, we're going to take a 5-minute break before we start our regular council meeting.